This podcast is brought to you by the American Enterprise Institute.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, review, and share.
Thanks for listening. Here's our show.
What the hell is going on?
What's really going on?
We said, what the hell happened?
You don't have to know what the hell is on it.
They see what's going on. I don't know what's going on. What is going on?
We must find out what is going on.
Hi, I'm Danielle Pletka.
And I'm Mark Thiessen.
Welcome to our podcast, What the Hell is Going On? Mark, what the hell is extra this week?
What the hell is going on, Danny, is you wrote a brilliant piece.
It had to happen.
Which made everybody in our followers say, what the hell is going on?
Exactly. Well,
no. It was one of your many brilliant pieces. But we're talking. I mean, we're recording this on Monday evening before the anniversary of October 7th, and we're in the midst of these negotiations between Hamas and Israel and in Egypt and the United States to end the war in Gaza and to return the hostages. And Trump has laid out a plan to do that. And so we're in the midst of all that. And you wrote a kind of a skeptical piece about where this is all going, why the fundamentals are not there for a lasting peace. But right now, I think everybody's just holding their breath, hoping that the hostages will be released and then the rest can shake out. So I don't know. What do you think, Danny?
so, right. I mean, I think, look, this is, at the end of the day, the leverage that Hamas has is the hostages. Okay, there have been a bunch of very good articles written about the Trump plan, and I think look, again, there is no plan that is going to satisfy everybody. These are enemies, right? And because they are enemies, there is nothing that is going to bring them together. But I think that on balance, the Trump plan, while there are things about it I don't especially love, on balance, the Trump plan is a good one. And of course, the sine qua non is the immediate release of the 48 hostages remaining in the hands of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza. 20 of them are believed to be alive. Benjamin Netanyahu thinks he knows where they are. That's what he's told reporters when he was here in Washington, D.C. last week. And once those guys are gone, then, of course, Hamas is required to disarm. It no longer has a role in the future of Palestinian governance. And, it doesn't want that. But once the hostages are back, its leverage evaporates. And that is why that is the focus of the Israeli government. And I think that Donald Trump has recognized, with the help of some of his very good friends and advisors, that what Hamas said to him in response to his plan was not yes. It was yes, but. And so even though in the immediate aftermath, he said, Israel has to end all bombing right now because Hamas said yes. He has recognized that, in fact, Hamas has no intention of doing what it does not wish to do unless it is forced to do so. And so that's kind of the state of play of the negotiations. But what I really tried to talk about in the piece that you very kindly referenced on our What the Hell is Going On Substack is that 2 years after this terrible attack, notwithstanding the global sympathy for terrorists, murderers, rapists, torturers, and killers in Hamas, is that there is a failure to understand that this fight is not really about land. This fight is really not about Palestine. And so I wrote, the piece. The headline is 2 years after October 7th, there is no path to peace.
So let's get to it, and we're going to have you read it in a second. But before we do turn to that, let's finish off on the peace plan. So what I think that is brilliant that Trump has done in laying this plan out is that he has gotten everybody to agree to it, and then it's up to Hamas. And Hamas can say yes or no, right? And he's front-loaded the hostages, right, which is their only leverage. So if they don't release the hostages, they're a no. And if they're a no, he said they're going to get obliterated, including possibly with U.S. military help, right? So he's put Hamas in a position which it's having trouble, it wants to get out of, but can't really get out of, which is if you say no to everybody has said yes. Our Arab allies have said yes. Israel has said yes. The United States has said yes. Tony Blair has said yes in helping to govern the post. I mean, and it's a detailed 20-point plan, not just for the end of the war, but for a return to prosperity for a Palestinian territory that could one day become a state, right? So this is all laid out with the entire world willing to fund it, willing to support it, willing to build it, and Hamas is the only obstacle. If they say no, I don't want to hear anybody saying the word genocide ever. They should never be saying it, but don't give me any of your genocide anymore, because this is the Hamas has rejected this proposal, and it all hinges on the hostages. Because even if the whole thing falls apart after that, if it forces them to give up the hostages, then that's a good. Don't you agree with that?
I do, actually. And I think that there's an irony here. So one of the things that you and I have talked about on this podcast before is that we really despaired at the loss of the propaganda war that the Israelis were fighting. And the problem, of course, is that there is this, dare I say, cabal of the far left, a smaller pinch of the far right, global academia, the United Nations, and academia who, together with governments of the far left, like the one in the UK, like the one in France, like the one in Spain, have decided that the problem is not the murder of 1,200 men, women, children, and pets. The problem is the Jews. Right?
Okay, hold on, wait, Danny, but I don't understand, because isn't that all controlled by the Rothschilds? I mean, everything you've described is controlled by the Jews, according to the anti-Semites. How can they possibly be controlling all these levers of power and media and influence? I don't understand, Danny. If the anti-Semites are right, then how could this be happening?
Well, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, and
I'm sorry, I
so,
interrupted you.
No, but you're completely right. I mean, if you are a conspiracy theorist, and of course many of these people are, then one would hope that you would understand that if you believe all of these bad things about the Jews, then in fact you should wonder to yourself why it is that the global press and entertainment industry and everybody else is turning on the Jews. But I guess I'm going to wait for Tucker to explain that to me.
Okay, good. Yes.
But
with bated breath awaiting his next
we
podcast.
all are indeed, yes. But so, what, Mark, what I think happened, and I will say I revised my take on this. When the Israelis struck Qatar, and if everybody remembers, it was a couple weeks ago that the Israelis undertook a strike on Doha, the capital of Qatar. They killed a Qatari national, and they were attempting to assassinate the leadership of Hamas. And
a rare miss.
They missed. And if you're gonna kill the king, better not miss. But they did. And absolutely everybody came together, including the President of the United States, and said, "What the hell were you thinking, you idiots," right? This is a crazy thing to do. Well, I've revised my opinion of this, and I've revised it because what happened was that the Israelis launched this strike, and the Qataris didn't detect them incoming, and we didn't detect them incoming, even though they gave a heads up to the White House that it was going to happen. And I think it was a massive wake-up call to the Qataris, who have always believed that by supporting Al-Qaeda and ISIS and America and Iran and others, that they had basically bought everybody off. And what they suddenly discovered was, oh my God, you could kill us. And that is what actually got Trump's deal. Right. That is actually what pulled Trump's deal together. And so, at the time I thought it was really stupid, but I've got to say, and maybe reality will prove me wrong, but the Qataris have made a major turnaround. And remember, for people who don't pay obsessively close attention to this like we do, there are two Hamases, right? There is the Hamas in Doha. They live at the Ritz. They have billions in the bank. Their wives carry Hermes bags. They secretly drink. They have been ripping off the Palestinian national movement for years because they're fat cats. And then there are the guys.
They even eat bacon.
Indeed. And then there are the guys in Gaza. And while I don't wish to aggrandize the guys in Gaza, they have a lot more bona fides in the whole jihad department than the guys who are hanging out at the beach, looking at the bikini-clad women in Qatar, watching people swill Chardonnay. And there was a big divide about whether to move forward. The Qataris and all of the other adherents of Hamas were leaning on Hamas, and Hamas Doha was saying, yeah, we got to do this. We got to make this deal. We've gotten what we can. We've gotten what we can. Greta Thunberg isn't going to save us. And the guys in Gaza were saying, hell, no. We're in this fight. We're not giving up. If we give up, it's bad for us. And they got muscled into it, which was very interesting. And anyway,
Yep.
So that's the state of play.
So that's the state of play. So you lay out the long-term skepticism for why this peace deal will work. We've just talked about the short term. Let's why don't you read your piece, and
Okay,
then we can
here
talk
it
about
is.
it.
Okay, so
Danny's piece by Danny, which is by Danny,
which is mine,
which is yours.
which is mine.
This is
Very
this is
small on one
a
end.
Monty Python bit for those who have not don't know what the hell we're talking about. But there you go.
Monty Python bit for those.
My theory, which is mine.
Yes. Anyway, this is
Look it
my
up on
theory.
YouTube. It's there. It's pretty
It's
funny.
really worth watching, guys, and more entertaining, I have to say, than talking about Hamas. But anyway, what the hell? 2 years after October 7th, there is no path to peace. The piece starts with just a little compilation of excerpts of the Hamas charter, which talks equally about Israel, Judaism, and the Jewish people, and the need to kill all of them. Tomorrow is October 7th, and I'd like to use the occasion to discuss the problem of peace. Right now, there's a sense of cautious optimism because Hamas has, quote, accepted, unquote, the Trump plan that envisions the return of all hostages, dead and alive, and provides for the disarming of Hamas, its exile from Palestinian politics, and more. You can find excellent analyses of the plan, its weaknesses, and its strengths elsewhere. I like Andrew Fox's take here. And as a little parenthetical, I really do like Andrew Fox on Substack, a Brit, very good military analysis, very fair, and very principled. The sad truth, however, is that this is not a step forward on the road to peace. It is not a step forward to a, quote, solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, whether two-state or otherwise. There is only one solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict: total defeat for the Palestinians currently in power. And that defeat is not on the cards. Let me explain. The creation of the State of Israel was the culmination of a long process that resulted in the division of the historic British Mandate in Palestine that itself dated after the Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I. There was never a state of Palestine, and there has not been, at least since Roman times, a Jewish state in the homeland of the indigenous Jews of the Holy Land. Remember, folks, the Jews lived in the Holy Land, in Judea, prior to the creation, or indeed birth, of Muhammad. So, yeah. But with the post-World War II race to end the colonial era, the UK was ready, with substantial violent encouragement, to bail on its mandate. And the UN took up the case, dividing the land between two states, Israel and, quote-unquote, Palestine. From the moment of the United Nations Partition Plan's adoption on November 29, 1947, those who would live in quote-unquote Palestine and their compatriots in the Arab world rejected the state's creation. Why? Because the key was not the creation of Palestine, it was the rejection of the creation of the State of Israel. Remember, when the Palestine National Charter was adopted in 1964, it specifically renounced claims to the West Bank and Gaza. The aim of the Palestine Liberation Organization, which released the charter, was the destruction of the State of Israel. Little has changed. Before we turn to the Palestinian cause and its adherents, some more history. 1964 was before Israel's victory in the Six-Day War, before Jordan's loss of the West Bank and Egypt's loss of Gaza. In the years between the declaration of the State of Israel and that war, what was the status of those territories? They were under Jordanian and Egyptian sovereignty. What were Palestinian claims on them? None. These territories only became important because of the Jews that suddenly ruled. And with the advent of Jewish dominion over the Egyptian and Jordanian territories of Gaza and the West Bank, the Palestinian cause suddenly found a platform that would resonate more deeply. Give us, they and their allies demanded, the West Bank, Gaza, and some part of Jerusalem, and we will make peace with the Jews. This was always a lie. A palatable and necessary lie, but a lie nonetheless. The PLO leadership and its Western frontmen, some well-intentioned and others less so, recognized that an incremental approach was tactically shrewd, and they embraced it. But as Bill Clinton said last year, again, quote, all young people in America know that a lot more Palestinians have been killed than Israelis, and I tell them what Arafat walked away from, and they, can't believe it. Arafat walked away from a Palestinian state with a capital in East Jerusalem, 96% of the West Bank, 4% of Israel to make up for the 4% of the West Bank to be annexed for Israeli settlements, and all of Gaza. But Yasser Arafat was never meant to be the leader of a free, sovereign Palestine. He was a rebel leader, a terrorist, and later a terrorist fetishist who preferred cash to hijackings and war. He helped fashion the Palestinian Authority into what it is now in Ramallah, a kleptocratic authoritarian rump, uninterested in much beyond rhetoric and lucre, and killing Jews, of course, but not necessarily first and foremost. It was the PA's own corruption and dishonesty that fueled Hamas's rise. The Israelis helped too, believing a little bit of competition would weaken the PA. This was insanity, playing with fire, and Hamas grew into a political force more respected and better liked than the original PLO gang. But Hamas had no intention of accepting Israel's, quote, right to exist within secure and defined borders, unquote, as the PLO had. Hamas, unlike the PLO, is part of something much larger. Where Arafat and his cohort were a stepped-up street gang with questioned, quote, Palestinian bona fides, Hamas is part of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928. The ideology is at the heart of what animates Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hamas. These are what we once called Muslim fundamentalists. Are some of them grifters and thieves afraid of death and willing to do business? Sure. They live in Qatar. In Gaza, there are more true believers. These true believers are not motivated by the prospect of a Palestinian state. That is merely a proximate, temporal goal. Their true motivation is the revival of Islamic domination. Their interim goal is the destruction of the Jewish state. If you have two sides in a conflict and the goal of one party requires the total destruction of the other, there can be no deal. They will not give up. They will wait. Hamas will melt into the background and reemerge at a time of its choosing, its goal the same as it has been for decades. Does that mean a Palestinian state can never be? Not now. Not soon. Hamas is not ended. Its ideology has not been tossed to the ash heap of history. Its supporters remain in the West Bank and Gaza and in the West. They will sustain Hamas as it waits to fight another day. What real estate moguls like Donald Trump and Steve Witkoff fail to grasp is that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not about land. It is about ideas. And for as long as the Palestinian idea is built upon the destruction of the Jewish state, there will be no peace. It is as simple as that.
So that is a great take explaining why in the long run this is not going to work. So here's the interesting thing that jumped out at me is it's not just the physical defeat of Hamas in the current war in Gaza that's important. It's also the ideological defeat of Hamas that has to take place, right?
And this is something you've been saying for a long time, and I have to say, it made me a little bit itchy at the outset, and I'm with you.
Thank you. We had Haviv Reddick-Gur on the podcast not long after October 7th, and to explain what was going on. And one of the things that he said that struck me, and I'll butcher he's so brilliant and articulate, and I'm going to butcher his explanation, but that there's a difference between Hamas and the PLO, or the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah, the party that leads the Palestinian Authority. Fatah wants to destroy Israel, but they want a state. Sort of, right? They care more about kleptocracy and all the rest of it, but they both want to destroy Israel. But Fatah wants a Palestinian state that they will govern and rule that encompasses all of the land of Israel, right? Hamas doesn't give a crap about a Palestinian state. That's not the way Haviv put it. But they are part. They're rooted in the Muslim Brotherhood. They are ideological twins of Al Qaeda and ISIS, and they want to see the destruction of Israel followed by the destruction of the United States because they want to see a global caliphate in which all the infidels are killed or converted, and Islam rules the entire world. It's the same ideology that attacked us on 9/11. Right. And so that ideology, they're not interested in statehood. They don't care about a Palestinian state. They don't care about the fact that that the territory that they would get is actually not Palestine, but it's actually Egypt and Jordan. Right. Which is another fascinating element of your piece. I'd forgotten that this was actually sovereign Egyptian territory, not part of not part of so-called Palestine. Right. And so their ideological goal will not be satiated by any plans to lay out a path for prosperity for Palestinians living in a Palestinian state. They just don't care about that, right? And so the only way to have a Palestinian state one day is to utterly and completely defeat the ideology of Hamas, and also to have a process of de-radicalization in the Palestinian areas by people who are adherents to the ideology of Hamas. Unless, if Nazism hadn't been utterly vanquished and then the ideology banned and the people of Germany forced to confront their complicity in the crimes of fascism, then you could have never had a German state emerge from World War II. It required the military conquest and the ideological conquest of Nazism in order to have a state. And the same is true when it comes to the Palestinians. I tell the story that my mother fought the Nazis in World War II. I would say I was always very proud. My mother fought in the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, and I would say she fought the Nazis, and she'd correct me, and she'd say, "No, I fought the Germans." And it was a hugely important distinction. She wasn't fighting a political party or a political faction. She wasn't fighting Hitler. She was fighting a country whose citizens had elected Hitler, a country whose citizens basically were fine with what Hitler was doing until it came back to bite them. And that's true of the people of Gaza too. They hate the Jews. They want to see Israel destroyed. They don't want to have two states living side by side in peace. The only reason they are unhappy with Hamas is because of what October 7 wrought for them in retaliation. And unless you get to the point where you can have a process of de-Hamasification akin and even exceeding the denazification of Germany post-World War II, there is no chance that this is going to ever work. So
let's talk about this, because here's my biggest concern, and this was the root of why I sort of hesitated when you started talking about this de-Hamasification. This is not a digression, but
can I just tell people how proud I am right now? Because you are the Middle East expert, and I've brought you around to my way of thinking on something having to do with the Middle East, which I think is pretty.
There you go. You have, but I will say that it is our enemies who have done a great job of persuading me, much as Putin has done a great job of persuading President Trump of the wisdom of supporting Ukraine. Our enemies, have done a great job. Our enemies
do our work for us.
They do our work for us, and we are lucky that we can rely on them. But
so tell me how you changed your mind. And what your concern was initially.
Well, so my concern initially is pretty straightforward, and I was about to sort of go on this little tangent, but folks know that you and I have spent a lot of time paying attention to the breakdown in order in Europe. Not just censorship. We've had Dominic Green on a couple times, but Islamic grooming gangs, the loss of freedom of speech, the rampant anti-Semitism that is now on fire across Europe. In so much of Europe, 2 million Italians joined a strike for Gaza. 2 million. And not every one of them is a cretin like Greta Thunberg. Not every one of them has mental problems. And that to me is completely horrifying. And the problem for us is pretty straightforward. We no longer have the conviction needed in the superiority of the West, in the
Amen.
superiority of the Judeo-Christian system that animates everything that America means. And when I say Judeo-Christian, that is not a desire to exclude Muslims or Hindus or anybody else, whatever they are. It is merely a set of beliefs that I know, all my Muslim friends sign up to as well, which is about the rights of man. It is about the importance of democracy. It is about the ideals that are inherent in our Bill of Rights. And while I think we are still salvageable, although I worry a lot about America, given our academics and given the direction of the far left. In Europe, this erosion is almost complete. This is a Europe that so broke with Nazism and fascism that they went the entire other direction in extremism, right? In believing not simply that that fascism is bad, that murdering Jews is bad, but believing that believing in your country is bad, right? That support for your nation is bad, that holding up a flag, right? As we know in the UK, where people are being arrested.
Country.
Right. We're holding up a flag of your own country is a bad thing. Is akin
Not only that,
to
holding up your country's flag while other people are marching with the enemy's flag, and they take away your flag.
Right. Because the system is now in the service of the opposite of these ideals. And if you do not believe in yourself, if you cannot say, no, actually, the system of the United States of America is better than the system of Gaza. The system of the United States of America is better than the system of Saudi Arabia or Iran or Pakistan. If you cannot say that and not understand that women's rights, religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom to gather, and all of the other freedoms that we hold and clutch dear to our souls because they define everything that we are. If you can't make that argument, and increasingly, by the way, our own Department of State can't make that argument, and the Biden administration wouldn't make that argument, you cannot win this ideological war. We had no problem fighting communism. We believed our system was better, and things like Radio Free Europe, on what you're on the board of it, things like the Voice of America, they echoed those values. Now, National Public Radio echoes the values of the freaking Soviet Union, right? Now we are in the process of losing this fight. And if you do not believe in yourself, I don't know how it is that you walk into Gaza and say, your system is wrong.
Yep.
That's my fear.
So we need my point. I think you've accepted my point and expanded on it, which is my point was we need a dehamasification of Gaza, and your point is we need a dehamasification of the West.
Yes. Also,
and I think you're 1,000% correct. I was thinking too small about the problem. The problem is global, and I'll tell you what. You one of the things that really shocked, a statistic that really shocked me last year. The Gallup poll always does annual poll on patriotism, and in 1990. The number, I'm going to get the numbers a little bit off because I don't have it in front of me, so I'm doing this from memory. But in 1990, 70% of Americans said that they were extremely proud to be an American. Last year, it was 38%. And among young people, 18 to 29, 18%. So that is the canary in the coal mine, folks, that we are not raising young people to believe in the supremacy of Western ideas. See, this is the great thing about our country that makes us unique in the world, is that Western, nationalism is always decried as, sort of a source of friction and tension and all the rest of it. Because if you're a nationalist from some countries, it sounds like you're believing in the superiority of your blood, right, and your race. In America, we're making the case for the superiority of our ideas, right? Which are not exclusive like blood and soil nationalism is. They're inclusive. Anybody could believe in those ideas, and you're welcome here in this country if you do. The problem we have is that we have been bringing it, unbeknownst to any of us until this whole thing blew up, just like we didn't know how many people hated Jews, we also didn't know how many people hated America and Western ideas, and how many people we had imported into this country who aren't here because they believe in the principles of the Declaration of Independence. They're here because they want to change things. They want, and there was just, I think I sent you a reel the other day of a protester in Canada who was literally saying, look, in 50 years, we're going to have Sharia law here because you're not having children and we are, and we're going to be the majority, and we're going to take over, and we're going to impose Sharia law. It's inevitable. That's why we're here. Why would we allow that? We're not, they're way further along on this in Canada, though it's close because of the proximity. They're way further along on this in Europe. We have time to stop this still. And, and we've got, and I think you're right. The solution in the long run to the Middle East is solving the problem here at home.
Right, because at the end of the day, and the funny thing is, Mark, I do a little less of this than I used to, but I used to go around the country and speak to, world affairs councils and schools, and I would say, who is not with me? Who says women's rights are garbage, right? Religious freedom is garbage. Do you not believe these things? Do you not understand we have these things here, and that what I believe is that we need to fight for those things everywhere? And people would be like, oh, absolutely. And then the answer is, of course, no. Not only are they not fighting for those things everywhere, but in the insane again, I always feel the need to defend myself because I love immigration. I believe in immigration. You and I constantly say we are freaking immigrants. We are the children of immigrants. But immigration cannot
So is Donald Trump.
Right. You cannot be a refugee from freaking Afghanistan in order to try to bring Sharia law to the United Kingdom. And this is where I think that our allies, the Canadians, and we as well, have lost the plot because what we believe. We fought a revolution for this. And when I say that, by the way, as an immigrant, I mean, you people fought an immigration. You fought a war for this. I just came in 1969, but I believe in it with all my heart. And one of the things that you used to see, I'm just doing some genealogical research for.
Can I just stop you for one second?
Yeah.
Because you just hit something I want you to do talk to the
Yeah. Go ahead.
You just hit on what's changed.
Right.
Because you talked about the American Revolution and you said we. And then you stopped yourself. And it used to be that every immigrant thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Right? Every immigrant looked and said, the American Revolution? Yeah, we fought a revolution against the tyranny of George III, and we declared that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we did. Even if their parents just got here, a year ago, right? Or a few years ago. And now they don't think of it as we. That a lot of these immigrants, because we have the problem is not immigration, it's the failure of assimilation
and education
and the education system, which has taught people that assimilation is a bad thing, right?
And I mean, skip my genealogical story for a second, which was about to make exactly the point that you did, which is that this was, for Jews at the turn of the 20th century, this was the golden land, the promised land. That was not Israel. That was here in America. And we are not that promised land anymore because we've abandoned a lot of those values. And that is not an argument to exclude people. It is an argument to underscore something that our colleague Gary Schmidt has worked on incredibly over the years. And, it is a Sisyphean battle, which is civics education in school, right? Yep. Kids should freaking stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Kids should learn the Constitution. Kids, of course, learn about the evils of the Civil War and the evils of slavery and the mistakes we made over the years and women's rights and Martin Luther King, but not to the exclusion of the values that we hold dear and that, I'm going to say it, make us better than them. And when we talk about Gaza, then you start to understand UNRWA, right? Why was UNRWA such a terrible, pernicious force? Because it dominates education. It dominates, and it dominates not just education in Gaza, it dominates education in all the so-called Palestinian refugee camps that exist around the Middle East, where these captive audiences are taught by Hamas ideologues, right, pretending to be United Nations bureaucrat, paid for by the American taxpayer. And I thank Donald Trump for ending that. I only hope that we're able to sustain it. But this is the challenge for us. And we are, you said this to me over the weekend because Mark and I can't stop chatting all the time, not just on our podcast. But, I feel like all of these values are under assault everywhere.
Western civilization is under assault everywhere you turn. It's happening everywhere. And I'll tell you, you know what? Who agrees with us on what we're talking about right now is Trump. When I interviewed him in Mar-a-Lago before the election, and we did a whole podcast on this if you want to go back. But I got him to talk about his pro-legal immigration positions, and he told me about his father who came from Germany with his grandfather to join the gold rush and built hotels for the gold rush. And I thought what was amazing was his visit to England recently. His mother was a Scottish housemaid who grew up in abject poverty in Scotland, and in one generation, her son, a first-generation American, is elected president of the United States and is feted at Windsor Castle by the King of England, and his wife and the Queen ride to the event in the Scottish royal carriage. That is, if you want proof of what makes America exceptional, that's it. That couldn't happen in any other country. But what he said was, I asked him, do immigrants make America better? And he said, yes, they do, but they have to come here legally. They have to come here because they want to work, and they have to love our country. And I think those are three very reasonable conditions to put on legal immigration. And the problem we have is that we've let in millions and millions of people who don't meet any of those conditions.
Are in specific opposition to those values.
But that's the threat to legal immigration. It's not from Donald Trump. It's from the people who let those people into this country, who are marching in New York and all these cities with Hamas flags. Those are the people who have undermined immigration in this country.
No. Look, I mean, I love the Middle East. Did you see the
story in Dearborn the other day with the mayor of Dearborn?
Yes.
So,
I saw the video.
And by the way, this is another thing why, people who don't, if you don't watch Fox News, you're like in a different ecosystem. There's stuff happens in this country you're unaware of, right? So if you're not a Fox News viewer, or you didn't get, if I didn't send you the clip like I probably did to Danny of this event.
Yes, because I don't watch Fox News.
The mayor of, I think it's the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. There's a town hall meeting, and a resident who's been in this country a long time stood up to complain about a street being named for a terrorist.
Right.
And the mayor of Dearborn shut him down and said, if you don't like it, get out. And the mayor of Dearborn is a first-generation American whose parents came here from somewhere in the Middle East. I'm not sure where he's from. And it's like,
not
I'm
Israel.
Sorry, what? What? You're telling him to get out? Are you kidding me? Because you named a street for a terrorist?
I know.
This Americans look at this and they say, we got to stop letting in people who think this way. And they're not wrong.
No, I know. Listen, Mark, this is one of the reasons I've been talking to Stephen about this. We don't put up a lot of political signs on our lawn, but I have a political sign up on my lawn supporting Jason Miyares, who's running for the Republican Attorney General slot in the state of Virginia. And one of the
against
biggest
a potential mass shooter.
Right. I know. My God. Right. If nobody saw that story, that was absolutely unbelievable. That's who his opponent is. But why am I so interested, not in the governor, not in the lieutenant governor, but in Jason Miyares? Because he is prosecuting American Muslims for Palestine, which is the godfather organization to Students for Justice in Palestine, which is the Hamas front that has bedeviled us over the last 2 years. They are headquartered in Northern Virginia, and he has been on, dare I say it, jihad against them. And
You could probably say a crusade.
yes, well, perhaps that's true, but
And
look,
we got to bring back the crusades.
well, I'm not sure about that either. That wasn't so good for the Jews either. But I will say, people who remember the history know that when the Bush administration went after the so-called Holy Land Foundation, which actually is the progenitor of American Muslims in Palestine, all the same people, it shut down American support for Hamas in the wake of 9/11. And this is what we need to do because, guys, yeah, I know Israel is far away and the Jews and whatever, and and there, look, this is not a one-sided story. There are plenty of people who hate Hamas in Gaza, and I get that. But at the end of the day, what we need to remember is they only come first for the Jews, right? But then they come for everybody else. And this is what the story of the 1930s is. And I feel like we're living through a period like that.
The Jews are like the canary in the coal mine for the West.
And Mark, I wrote after October 7th that one of the things that has been a question I've asked myself all my life, because of course I lost a lot of my family in the Holocaust, is what would I have done? Right? What would I have done? Because fear is a huge driver, right? You don't want to believe that people want to kill you. You don't want to believe that concentration camps exist. You don't want to give up your home, your land, your village, your people, your friends, your relatives, your job, your bank, your community in order to run to some safe haven in the face of something that you're not sure about. Would I have stood up? And it animates me to this day because the answer is you got to stand up.
Yep. Amen. So let's bring it back to Gaza because we I think correctly went to the home front in this struggle. This is what we need to recognize is that, and I sent you another image I sent you over the weekend was I think Liverpool FC put up a banner in the soccer stadium, and I will forever love the soccer hooligans of Liverpool for this. Put up a banner saying, "Israel, thank you for fighting for Western civilization," or something to that effect.
Yes.
And that is what this is. Whether it's here fighting these radicals in our midst, or fighting the radicals in Gaza, this is a battle for Western civilization, for defending Western civilization, and I am so glad that Trump laid out this plan. I think it'll be a tactical victory, right? I don't know if it'll end up in a strategic victory, right? I think that it's the absolute right thing to do to try and end the conflict, to try and force Hamas into crying uncle, And you know what? I just think it's inevitable that eventually they will say no, right? They'll say yes, and to the extent that they feel they have to because they have no choice, but eventually they'll say no. And then Donald Trump has said if they say no, if they insist on being part of the governance, that we're going to obliterate them. And I think this doesn't end until the obliteration takes place.
Yeah, well, we'll see. He said that before, and I hope he means it.
He said he was going to obliterate the Iranian nuclear program, and he did. So why not Hamas too?
He said he was going to obliterate Hamas as well in the beginning of this process, and unfortunately, but look, he's in the right place on this, and he's making an effort, which is more than you can say for all of those weasels who declared that they were recognizing a state of Palestine in order to reward Hamas.
Well, they're all bending the knee to these radicals that they've led into their countries.
Mark,
I mean, truly, they're afraid. It's appeasement.
0.5% of England's population is Jews. 8% is Muslims. In Australia, 100,000 population of Jews, 800,000 of Arabs. In France, it's even higher. In Holland, it's even higher. you know, in a democracy, you understand suddenly why people bend the knees to the Sharia law advocates. But that's the fight that's ahead of us.
Everything that Poland did for us in the Battle of Vienna is being destroyed through this open invitation of hostile people into you know, they don't even bother with the Trojan horse. They just come right in and they're welcomed with open arms, and they want to destroy the country from within.
But you rightly say, shame on us, because what we need is not to say no to people. What we need to say is yes, like Hamas, yes, but here's what our country stands for. You need to stand for this as well.
Or don't come.
And with that, or don't come. Right, exactly.
Or you're not allowed in.
Right. Go to the UK. Go to Canada.
Exactly.
Go to Afghanistan.
Destroy Western civilization somewhere else.
Yes, please. Please.
We're going to stand as the bulwark of Western civilization, damn it.
I hope we do. I hope we don't falter, because this is I think an inflection point, an historic inflection point for all of us. And on that rather somber note, folks, thanks as always for listening, and we will see you soon.
Take care.
Let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. You can get in touch with the show by emailing us at whatthehell@aei.org.
Or you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at @dpletka.
And I'm at Mark Thiessen. That's Mark with a C.
Please rate and review the podcast. If you like the show, please subscribe, share it, comment on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this.
Thanks for listening.